Consumers choose to defer their vehicle purchases ahead of election outcome, and that's reflected on the overall auto sales numbers, more so for the country's largest car maker Maruti Suzuki. But now that the mandate's been delivered, will the going get easier? And is it enough to spur the sales back into the system? Let's ask Maruti Suzuki's RC Bhargava, who's joining us right now on the show. He's the chairman of the company. Mr. Bhargava, thanks so very much for taking out the time and speaking with us. You previously mentioned that obviously the first half is still going to remain tough for the auto industry as a whole. But is this pain a bit too prolonged, according to you?
No, not really. The figures which you are seeing for the first 2 months of this quarter, I think what most people are not taking into account was that last year, April and May had absolutely extraordinary sales figures. If you look at those figures, they were around 170,000 a month. And 170,000 a month translates to sales of well over 2 million cars in the year, which was just not normal. So when you do this month-to-month comparison each year, what happened in the previous month last year, then you have the effect of the base. And this time the base is very high in these 2 months. Sure, the market is soft, the demand is slow, but it's not as bad as it appears from the percentage figures which you come up with year to year.
Sure, okay, get the point. But I believe from July last year, of 2018, the growth is somewhat stagnated. And in fact, at start of January this year, the dip has started coming in a big way. Demand has suffered. There's been a pushback of purchases. How is the auto industry looking to tackle this?
No, but it's not unusual. In 2008, which was the year before the elections, the sales were very low, I think at about 1 to 2%. The same thing happened in 2013. And this lasts for a year. These downturns are not things which happen for 2, 3, 4 months. It happens almost in every industry that there's a little bit of a cyclical phenomena which is witnessed. So it's been slow, but it's not even a year yet.
It's not a big worry for you, correct, at this point?
No, it's not a big worry at all. We are going ahead with our expansion plans. We're making our investments because we are pretty confident that the demand will come back.
When do you see that happening, though?
Our estimate is it will happen certainly by the second half of this year, maybe earlier in around August or so. Even this month, you might see that the figures are similar to what was last year. I think this decline in sales will stop probably from this month.
Mr. Bhargava, sir, good morning. Neeraj here.
Morning.
A lot of people are attributing this slowdown due to either of the two factors. One, the liquidity in the system, and two, the general slowdown with the GDP numbers having come out the way they have. You seem to suggest that it is cyclical and not a factor of these two. These are only additions to the overall cyclicality.
Well, we've certainly not had any impact from the lack of liquidity. The financing of cars has not suffered on that account. The slowing down of the economy, of course, has an impact on sales. In fact, the cyclical effect is partly because the economy doesn't also keep growing steadily every month, every year. There is also dips and falls in the growth rate of the economy. And I think that reflects on the car sales.
Another thought, sir, is that people postponed their car purchases, the small car or the compact car purchases, the mini car purchases for the election verdict to be out, and then it would come back. Is that a legitimate...
Yeah, I think that seems to be what has been happening in the previous two elections and this year. I think before the elections, there is generally a certain amount of anxiety and uncertainty amongst people. And they slow down their purchases, the customer demand falls, not only for cars, but I think we've seen it in many other sectors where demand has fallen off in the last few months. And I think that maybe because there's uncertainty, I don't know what other factors would influence it, but it does seem to happen.
Okay. So you are a leader of the pack. Would you reckon that the pack at large would come back in the month of June, or would it be a company-specific phenomenon largely?
I don't think June will see so much growth. It's too early. I think we have to wait to see what I think is going to happen, the big ticket reforms from the new government, which will change sentiment, change the climate, and propel the economy on a higher growth path. But I think for those to be announced and their implications to be understood and to have a reflection in the market probably will take a couple of months.
Mr. Bhargava, since you said that you probably will see a turn in the sales numbers starting August, would that be a big function of pre-buying because of BS6?
So BS6 we've introduced two models on BS6. And so far the customers have not had any hesitation in buying the higher cost BS6 models. In fact, our experience is that on the Alto, they are buying more of the BS6 vehicles than the BS4 vehicles. The BS4 vehicles are slow in selling.
Okay, so you don't see a higher ticket price being a deterrent to customers?
Yeah, surprisingly, that's what seems to be happening. I don't know why again, but that's happening.
All right. Mr. Bhargava, let's talk about the overall export market as well. While domestically there are various factors playing up, and you said that it's not a big concern to you. What's going to be the key export driver going forward? How do you plan to make a push on that front?
See, exports are not a major policy objective of Maruti Suzuki. And exports last year also were about 108 or 109,000 cars. I don't think it's going to go very different from that this year.
Okay. You recently said that you're probably looking at sizing down on the diesel portfolio. What's the plan there with regards to diesel cars?
See, the 1.3 liter diesel cars will discontinue at the end of this year, because our estimate is that the increase in price to convert to BS6 will make these cars unaffordable for the buyer. So we are going to discontinue it. The 1.5 liter diesel probably will be affordable, but we have to see how it works out. Diesel sales are going down. And if it appears to us that the BS6 1.5 liter engines will be affordable, people will be willing to pay the higher price, we'll come out with our models based on that.
Just to get a sense from you, Mr. Bhargava, this complete transition, to BS6 models, what kind of a cost impact will it have for your company? I mean, if you've done, the cost modeling?
It's happening. The transition is already happening. As I said, BS6 diesel will not happen. And on petrol, we have seen the price increase it varies from car to car, because along with the BS6, sometimes we have to add the safety regulations which have also come in, which mandate airbag on the driver's side, which mandates ABS, which mandates side body impact regulations. So all of those are included. And that is why you'll find that the price increase varies, because some of these safety features were already incorporated earlier in many of the models. So this time, if you do, it may be only BS6 impact, which varies in the area of 6,000-8,000 rupees, something like that. But if safety measures come along, the impact can be much higher.
Okay. Mr. Bhargava, just last couple of questions from my end. On a couple of these models, with the diesel portfolio doing away, when does the Brezza petrol version come in play? And I believe the response to the new Ertiga has been pretty strong as well. Can you give us some flavor of how the different things are doing within Maruti?
The Brezza petrol, of course, will come in next year.
Okay.
But we will announce the date nearer the time of its introduction.
Okay.
And as far as the Ertiga is concerned, actually the demand has surprised us. It's much higher than what our marketing people had estimated. And the result is that actually a waiting list has built up, and we've had to take special measures to increase production capacity. We are almost doubling the production capacity for the new Ertiga. After, we have a shutdown in July, which is in June end, which is the normal shutdown for maintenance, which we have twice a year. In this shutdown, hopefully, we will make some extra investments and do some extra work, which will result in the Brezza capacity, not the Brezza, the Ertiga capacity going up substantially.
Okay. Sir, I just have one final question. A lot of these theories get floated around about how the Indian car market is still so underpenetrated because per 1,000 people there are only X cars versus what you see across the world. Isn't it chalk and cheese or apples and lemons to compare this? Because the per capita buying capacity of an average Indian and the infrastructure to run these cars on is just starkly different from what would happen in a Europe or a US?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think you can compare with the US and UK or Germany or someplace like that. But the infrastructure will certainly be a handicap, especially within the cities. Because unlike China, we are not going to be able to build urban infrastructure the way they did it. And that will be a limitation. But on the other hand, we have a lot of small cities which are under-penetrated. And when it comes to income, the Chinese explosion of vehicles, and China has as big a population, bigger than India, happened only when per capita incomes exceeded, I think, $3,000. And suddenly from that time, it became like a hockey stick pattern of growth. So we are waiting to see in India, once we cross that level and get to $3,000 or $3,500 per capita, at that stage, we might see a surge in demand. But, these are all based on not so much the European experience, but the experience we've seen in Asian countries. Places like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia have a much higher density of car population than we have.
Right. Mr. Bhargava, one last question on this conversation then.
Sure.
We've been talking about how at times, and mostly because of, lack of financing from NBFCs, most people have also pushed back buying cars. The other aspect being rural income and the fact that, up trading, people who were earlier on into two-wheelers trying to move up to the lower model cars, that number getting impacted because of farm distress and because of the rural distress incomes not picking up. Do you see that changing? Because, the environment is still in a bit of a sticky spot.
I'm not sure how far this rural distress thing is a valid argument which is made by people. I don't think that there's any evidence to show that rural conditions have suddenly changed for the worse any time. And the growth in the rural areas is still substantially higher than what it is in the urban areas. And I expect that trend to continue. The driving factor, I think, is not so much the fall in income or the growth in income, but the ability to reach more customers in the rural areas. Because compared to the urban areas, the distribution and service network in rural areas is much, much thinner than it is in the urban areas. And our policy now is to expand aggressively the distribution and sales network in the rural areas. And I think that's going to keep driving the sales in the smaller towns and the villages much faster.